Hello and welcome to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and tonight we got a lot to break down, everybody. We got the Washington football team shocking the Pittsburgh Steelers 23-17, snapping the Steelers 11-0 starting the season, and also freaking Josh Allen, just decided to go off on everybody, most specifically the San Francisco 49ers, 34-24 Bills Mafia victory, with Josh Allen showing out for the majority of the evening. So I want to break down these two games. Also, as we do every Tuesday on this podcast, go through some of the waiver wire options for the week. Not necessarily listing only guys I like, but just going through the people that I'm sure you'll be reading about across the industry and just trying to get my two cents with that. So thank you as always for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, and let's get after it, everybody. Starting off with the football team's win over the Steelers. Yeah, so in this one, Steelers looked like they were going to potentially run away with it. They went up 14-0 in the second quarter, touchdowns to Deontay Johnson and James Washington, 14-3 halftime lead. Just seemed like, a ho-hum effort for the Steelers, even if it wasn't all that impressive, but not so fast, my friends, as the wise man Lee Corso would say. Just nothing doing for Pittsburgh offense in the second half. They had no run game throughout the game, no real explosive pass plays other than James Washington getting that 50-yard touchdown in the first half. And to Washington's credit, that was more or less due to him, just catching a short curl and running away from guys. So Claypool had one nice 30-yard catch to set up the Deontay Johnson score in the first place, but for the most part, just not any big plays out of this offense. We saw Ben Roethlisberger throw for 305 yards and a pair of scores. Took him 53 pass attempts to do so. Give Alex Smith a lot of credit for the comeback. He was able to find Logan Thomas for a score. Got pretty wide open on a pick, but touchdown's a touchdown, as they like to say, I'm sure, as the kids say. And also Alex Smith should have probably had a second touchdown, Logan Thomas, but he got brought down just short of the goal line, and Peyton Barber was able to punch it across shortly afterwards. So Ben had a chance at the end to maybe take him down and tie it, but first pass to the drive ended up being tipped at the line of scrimmage and then picked off. So Alex Smith, Washington football team sitting now at 5-7, were able to knock off the big bad Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to quickly dive into some more specifics here. I mentioned Roethlisberger, but everything was so short in this one. Anytime you average 5.8 yards per attempt, you're going to have problems. And we've seen this really through most of the year, but really in recent weeks, because in the first part of the season, they were trying to still run the ball with James Conner, despite having this low ADOT passing game. But more and more over the past 5-6 weeks, even in games that the Steelers have comfortably controlled, and again, they were up multiple scores at halftime in this one as well, but we have seen them, fully shift to a pass-first offense, and we're just not getting the same sort of deep ball goodness that we've seen, in past versions of the Steelers offense. So you know what? In fantasy football, we're usually getting full point per reception scoring. Doesn't really matter for us. So when we see Deontay Johnson with 8 catches, Eric Ebron with 7, and even Juju Smith-Schuster with 7, even though these guys didn't have the best games, and by the best games I mean both Deontay and Ebron dropped at least 3 passes each. Truly not good performances by them. But you know what? You don't lose drops. You don't lose fantasy points for drops in the game. So we got to play the cards we're dealt and all that. And because of that, even though Deontay and Ebron have some serious drop issues, we got to continue to go the well with these guys in fantasy football. Johnson 71 yards in the touchdown. Ebron had 68 scoreless yards himself. Doesn't exactly make sense why these guys are getting so heavily utilized over Chase Claypool. As someone that's watched every Steelers game this year, it's pretty clear that Claypool is their best wide receiver, at least in the year 2020. You look at the snaps. Juju played 57, Deontay 54, James Washington 36 snaps, and Chase Claypool 28. So Mclaren was also out there for 5 snaps, but it's just confusing because Claypool, look, he is not DK Metcalf. Please do not confuse my words up with that. But he is one of these guys where you see when every time Roethlisberger looks downfield to him, good things tend to happen. He did draw at least 1 defensive pass interference on downfield shot this game, and only 4 targets. I would like to see 4 or 5 targets just on those downfield deep shots alone, not even counting the stuff he can do in the red zone just with the ball in his hands. So Claypool needs to be utilized more. I think he's been their most explosive player on offense all season long, even with Deontay Johnson generally being good with the ball in his hands. In my opinion, Chase Claypool is the best wide receiver on the Steelers. If they want to reach their potential on offense, I think they're going to need much more of the attack to flow through him. Steelers running game was a mess. Benny Snell, 32 snaps. Jalen Samuels, 24. And Anthony McFarland, just 11. Snell led the way with 8 carries, just 5 yards, though. It was brutal at one point. They got down to the 1-yard line because of Snell. He got them there. Then they tried to throw him a target in the end zone. That got knocked down. And then Snell got stuffed, not 1, not 2, but 3 times at the goal line. So they really just ignored the running game after that. Anthony McFarland, 4 carries for 15 yards. They tried to throw him, sluggo route on a freaking 4th and 1 that, the announcers were kind of critiquing. kicking Anthony McFarland for not having the body control to come down with it. What are you doing throwing a freaking ISO route to Anthony McFarland on 4th and 1? Line it up and run it, or throw it to one of your, just insanely more talented wide receivers or even tight ends that can deal with something of this magnitude a little bit better. So disappointing from these running backs. And we knew without James Conner in there, it was going to be a little bit up and down. The fact that this offense has no plans of giving someone like Snell even anything close to 15 carries cements him as more of a low-end RB3 at best throughout James Conner's absence. Unfortunate situation here, but this Pittsburgh Steelers backfield in this version of the offense is not getting any sort of consistent usage. Mentioned the drops from Deontay, counted 3 of them. This is the second straight week he's had multiple drops. Hey, he's not losing the snaps. That seems to be Claypool wash and doesn't make much sense, but it's just wild that Deontay can go from looking like a perennial wide receiver one moment. I mean, again, he has the route running goodness and the yards after the catch ability to truly, deserve a lot of the hype he's gotten, but all these drops, and you just look at his yards per target numbers and some of the efficiency metrics, not exactly what you want to see out of someone that we're all hoping can kind of rise to the top of this Steelers receiving room. So it's another 20-point, fantasy effort. Pretty much every game he's been healthy in this year, he's been putting up fantasy numbers. So again, even though he's had these drop problems, we don't care in fantasy land. He's an upside wide receiver too every single week. But I guess it's the fact that he's still being this good despite leaving so many yards on the table. That's so frustrating for everyone to watch. So hey, Deontay, good game out there. You were able to get those fantasy points we're looking for, but catch those balls that you're dropping, and all of a sudden we're talking about a legit wide receiver one potentially. Juju, 7 catches for 28 yards, just does not have the burst. It's sad to see. He doesn't look like he's all there physically. And yeah, we're not getting that yak that used to really make him as a receiver. Eric Ebron mentioned those drops as well. Just overall, disappointing performance from the Steelers. Definitely a game they had, a chance, plenty of chances to win throughout, and they just unfortunately could not get it done when it matters. So credit to the Washington football team, though, for getting this win. I don't, similar to the Seahawks Giants yesterday, I know a lot of people are going to come out and just say, oh, the Seahawks blew it, the Steelers blew it. No, we got to give some credit to the guys that were able to knock off, the big, bad final boss. And Alex Smith, he's had an up and down, experience this year, I think, but really over the past few weeks, he has been starting to play good, just in that terms of being a game manager and not being someone that is just allergic to throwing the ball downfield. Don't get me wrong, we saw plenty of checkdowns in this one, but if they're just literally not going to cover him, okay, we'll take freaking 10 targets to J.D. McKissic for 10 catches and 70 yards. Like, the issue has never really been dumping the ball down. We see plenty of offenses dump the ball down. Nick Mullens and Jimmy Garoppolo are playing under Kyle Shanahan, one of the smartest offensive coaches, if not the smartest offensive coach in the entire league. Those are your bottom 5 quarterbacks in terms of average target depth. So every team's different, but just the single act of not throwing downfield doesn't mean an offense can't still be great. And to Alex Smith's success, most of the shots he was taking downfield were usually on target. Terry McLaurin had a chance at about a 40-yarder that went off his hands. It was in double coverage. It would have been a tough catch, but one we usually like to see him come down with. It was a disappointing game from Terry. Only 2 catches on 6 targets, 14 yards. Just realized Pittsburgh was really going out of their way to try to limit him and what he was able to do out there. So McLaurin, really the only other bust he had all year was against the Rams. So, Rams and Steelers, arguably the 2 best defenses in the league. Not the worst performances to have, your bad games against. Just realized McLaurin, he's someone that's been, getting 50 yards and or a touchdown almost on a weekly basis throughout this year. He's going to continue to be that, borderline wide receiver one, if not just locked in top 10 option. He's been all year here moving forward. The rest of these wide receivers, shout out Cam Sims, 5 catches, 92 yards on 9 targets. This guy, he didn't quite have the target qualifier, but has truly been one of the best yards after the catch wide receivers all year long. He had a hurdle in this one, which is always good. Always enjoy when one human jumps over another human. That never gets old, no matter how many times we see it. He did drop a touchdown, like Smith hit him in the chest on a potential goal line fade, but he made up for it later. Had an awesome one-handed catch to pretty much put them in position to kick the go-ahead field goal. So good game from Cam Sims. Look, Alex Smith threw the ball 46 times in this game. We saw in past matchups against the Cowboys and their win before that. Like, when they're able to get up and get a lead, Alex Smith is not throwing the ball more than 30 times. So don't get it twisted. It's still only Terry McLaurin that we're really interested in this wide receiver room in terms of fantasy land. But Cam Sims is someone that can make the most out of his limited opportunities, and that'll be something to keep in mind if we see this Washington football team on many more single game slates here moving forward. Would also mention Logan Thomas, great game, 9 catches, 98 yards and a score. Mentioned how he could have almost had a second score, but he was down just short of the goal line. They tried a funky play The result didn't work out, but I didn't hate the process. They've done this a couple times. We've talked about this on this podcast where usually Logan Thomas gets like a snap a game as a quarterback. It was 4th and 1. They motioned him, under center. He took the snap and then just handed it to McKissick on a jet sweep. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but I like what they're doing with Logan Thomas. He's one of these guys out there. Him and Trey Burton, pretty much the only tight ends that we can expect any sort of, wildcat, rushing, throwing, just added goodness from him. With Logan Thomas, we've now seen it pay off, in different ways over the weeks. He had the touchdown, I believe, against the Cowboys throwing the ball, and hey, he's been doing some things. I don't remember if it was specifically a touchdown, but he did complete a pass, I'm pretty sure. Sent us down a tweet, but I truly think that Logan Thomas, referencing him, having played quarterback in the past, that's the new Chris Hogan used to play lacrosse. So I know I'm the one that brought it up here, but in general, let's try to cut down on that. I think we all realize at this point that Logan Thomas has played quarterback in his past. Looking at this running game real quick, J.D. McKissick, 51 snaps, Peyton Barber, 23 snaps. If you're wondering why I haven't said Antonio Gibson's name yet, please take a seat. All right, you sitting? Turf toe, everybody. Antonio Gibson played 4 snaps, ripped off a freaking dope, I think it was 13-yard run, might have been 12, it was 13-yard run, and after that was not able to return to the game. So he was ruled doubtful, with this toe injury, looking like something that's absolutely going to hinder him moving forward, and it's just incredibly unfortunate because Gibson, 11 rushing touchdowns coming in this game, was someone that just seemed to be improving as the year went on, and we were actually starting to see them expand his passing game role. So, truly Gibson was getting those 15-plus rushes per game, and with the potential to get these 10 targets that we saw McKissick have in this one, we were looking at a potential high-end RB1. Doesn't look like that will be the case in 2020, but Gibson, I really think is going to potentially be a top 12 pick in fantasy football leagues of all shapes and sizes come next August in 2021. Hopefully the injury isn't, as severe as it looked, but does not look good for Antonio Gibson fantasy football managers. If he is out, look, this game script was iffy in this one. Just realized going this game, I know Peyton Barber jammed in the touchdown, but 86 players had at least 86 running backs had at least 25 carries going in this game. Peyton Barber was dead last in yards after contact per rush. So I know he's not Gibson and McKissick because he can't catch the ball, but just because you can't catch the ball doesn't mean you're necessarily a good inside runner, between the tackles. And I think that describes Peyton Barber to a T. I have no idea why he's consistently got so much run over the past 2 years, but hey, he is. So, situation where I don't think we should be expecting too many points week in and week out from this offense, and they have shown they're willing to give J.D. McKissick a pretty big load as well. So Barber, even if he is going to be the starter, in a Gibson's potential absence, I still think McKissick is going to be far and away the better fantasy option. I think that's about it. Quickly on Alex Smith, yeah, just a freaking soldier out there, guys. His other leg, not the one he messed up, but absolutely dripping blood, before halftime. I guess he got cleated by the center, and he just kept playing through it and doing his thing. So took 3 sacks, numerous big hits in this one. Hasn't always been pretty with Alex Smith. We talk about him dinking and dunking. I still don't agree with the way they've handled, Dwayne Haskins. And, just from the perspective that clearly Alex Smith is playing good football. Like, I'm not saying Haskins is even better for this Washington football team in 2020, but first round quarterback is like the most valuable just trade piece in all of football. And they have just pretty much tanked what they had in him. So, hey, credit the Washington football team. This was an awesome win. Alex Smith was a big reason why. Moving on to the Bills' victory over the 49ers, 34-24. Josh Allen was just absolutely lights out this entire game, everybody. I was expecting him to fall off after the first half because how could you not? He was 19 for 23, 236 yards and 2 scores at the half. He finishes 32 for 40, 375 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, just 1 sack. We didn't even have the usual, okay, we did lose 1 Josh Allen fumble. I was about to say, turnover-free performance in this economy? No freaking way. Not quite, but still an amazing game from Josh Allen, really from start to finish. And okay, the 49ers, they were seemingly pretty stubborn about getting away from their kind of base defense. We've seen them over the years, really, and by over the years, I mean mainly this year and last year, but with that pass rush they usually have, they were just so effective at shutting down opposing offenses, allows their cornerbacks to sit more on underneath routes and create turnovers that way. They were just they couldn't get any pressure on Josh Allen all night, and I think the stat they showed at halftime was he was 14 for 15 against zone coverage. So unfortunately, didn't really see the 49ers get off of their original game plan, and Josh Allen just kept picking them apart because of it. But do not think that this was a situation where Allen was just taking one easy throw after another. I think it was their second drive. He went down and he made a throw to Gabriel Davis over the middle. That was maybe the best throw I've ever seen him make, over the linebacker in front of the safety, right into a spot with the cornerback on Davis's hip. But that same drive, rolling out to his right, hitting Beasley downfield, hitting Diggs on the sideline, like just one extended play dart after another. Josh Allen truly forces you to defend every square inch of that field for better and for worse. And for the most part of 2020, it has definitely been for the better for Bills, Mafia, and fantasy football managers alike. So Josh Allen, QB1 season, keeps on keeping on. And the entire idea that, John Brown was going to be the guy to really limit him, in this game, just I never agreed with. And we talked about that on the podcast. We don't need to rehash it too much. But again, be careful with player on-off splits. It's already a small enough sample size with a 16-game season. Now we're taking 11 games out of that, and we want to, pick 3 of them where John Brown didn't play. Again, there were other situations to go into those splits, including John Brown, briefly playing in a Rams game that Josh Allen went off in. I just never agree with the idea that John Brown, who is a great NFL wide receiver, but Gabriel Davis isn't bad, and Stefon Diggs and Cole Beasley are probably better than John Brown, objectively speaking. We still have all that talent out there against a defense that was still missing so many defensive linemen despite, getting Sherman back. I just did not think it was enough of a reason to severely downgrade Josh Allen. Hopefully you agreed with me. We have been rewarded for sticking to the Josh Allen QB1 plan. But yeah, gotta give credit to these wide receivers. Cole Beasley had a career high in receiving yards by halftime, 9 catches, 130 yards in his score on the day. Just too much sauce for Cole Beasley. Guy keeps on keeping on. We've been giving him some credit on this podcast throughout the year for really setting career high numbers across the board. Wasn't that long ago he left the Cowboys and said that he just thought the Bills were a better situation for him. Well, Cole, you were 100% right, man. Good for you. Stefon Diggs couldn't find the end zone, but caught 10 of 11 targets for 92 yards. I mean, at the end of the game, it seemed like every single 3rd and 4th down that the Bills were getting in, they just freaking were able to get Diggs usually one-on-one against Jason Verrett, and he just could not do anything against some of the routes Diggs was showing out, out there with. Oh my goodness. Only had a long of 18, but just one, underneath intermediate target after another. I don't think we ever anticipated Diggs was showing this high of a chemistry level with Allen this early, but I think it's a testament to just how good Diggs is. Last year in Minnesota, he led all wide receivers in yards on deep balls, but they pretty much used Adam Thielen as their guy to, work in the intermediate areas of the field, or they just, ran the hell out of the ball with Dalvin Cook. We are truly seeing Stefon Diggs dominate the field underneath, intermediate, deep, and to see people like Richard Sherman out there just really not sure how to even defend him at some points. I think it just speaks to the fact that really nobody in today's NFL can consistently hang with Stefon Diggs for 60 minutes. Gabriel Davis, number 3 wide receiver, had a touchdown. I will say, this was a touchdown that I would say falls more into the Michael Pittman school of it's not really being due to his overwhelming talent or anything like that. We'll take all the fantasy points, but just realize, 3 catches, 68 yards, and the score. Like Sherman was pretty much expecting a curl or an out route from the slot player. Just read it wrong, and he let Gabriel get right behind him, and there was no one within 10 yards of him when he caught the ball in the end zone. So just 4 targets. It does seem like Josh Allen is fine, pretty much force-feeding Beasley and Diggs to his heart's desire. I don't think Davis is going to be more than, a boomer bust wide receiver 4 here during Brown's absence. More of a DFS stacking partner than anything. Isaiah Mckenzie also had a touchdown, and Dawson Knox. Just awesome designing from Brian DeBoer and just, Buffalo Bills, just coaching staff all as a whole. Josh Allen freaking killed it, everybody. I love it. This was a really fun game to watch. And one more quick note. I know he did have the bad flop. It was a very, very questionable roughing the passer penalty. People. Winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. You're all just focusing on Josh Allen. Let the guy have some success. Bills Mafia winning a Monday Night Football game. You got to love it. Quickly on the 49ers, Nick Mullens, didn't play as bad of a game, I think, as maybe his final numbers outlined. 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, but, should have had not should have, but almost had a 4th touchdown where he threw a little bit behind Kendrick Bourne. They initially ruled it a score. Unfortunately got overturned, and then when he stepped back to pass, the next play we tried to roll up and then ended up getting picked off by Tre'Davious White. So, first touchdown, just short little 2-yarder. Brandon Ayuk on a slant. Also got Kyle Juszczyk in the flat, and then was able to get a garbage time one in the back of the end zone to Jordan Reed. So made several nice throws throughout the game. Truly, he almost got picked early on in the second half, but then the next play he threw a pass rolling out to Ross Dwelley that was truly, exactly where he needed to be. So even one of his interceptions, I mentioned the issue of Trey White on the goal line, but his other pick hit Brandon Ayuk in the hands before popping up and go to defender. So Nick Mullens, truly was not the reason they lost this game. It was more the 49ers defense not being able to stop Josh Allen than just, I think, some instances of this run game, for example, only 86 yards and 21 carries. And I mentioned Ayuk, so, letting that ball hit off his hands. So I don't want to say Ayuk was too bad. He definitely made up for it. But, just realize Nick Mullens, still pretty damn good backup quarterback. We've seen some issues this year, and, some people want to go as far as saying that, you can challenge Jimmy G. I don't hate it, still give me Jimmy G, but he is certainly someone that we don't want to be giving up on just yet. The wild graphic they showed during the broadcast, only quarterbacks in NFL history with more passing yards than Nick Mullens in his first 13 starts: Patrick Mahomes, Andrew Luck. It's one of those, I saw the NBA kind of similar list that someone had. It was like Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, like Larry Bird, and then Thaddeus Young. So, hey, maybe it's one of those lists. The reason I was touting Chris Herndon all freaking offseason was because he had a similar, 12 tight end list. So I understand sometimes you'll get the exceptions to these great rules, like Chris Herndon looks like he probably will be. Maybe that's Nick Mullens, but also, that is a hell of a lot of production, and it's certainly a good list to find himself on after just 13 starts. Running game was frustrating for the 49ers. Raheem Mostert led the way, but just 21 snaps. And these are unofficial numbers, everyone, by the way, so it might have been a little bit more. I had to pull these, mid-fourth quarter. So stay tuned. Check out my running back article out Wednesday for the full backfield report. But he was at 21, Jeff Wilson 17, Tevin Coleman only 2, and McKinnon just 1. So it really was Mostert flipping with Jeff Wilson for most of this game. They both did good. Mostert 42 yards on 9 carries. Wilson 47 yards on 7 carries. But Mostert, man, he's just so fast. I wish they would get this guy 15 touches per game no matter what. The only 2 players since 2016 per Next Gen Stats to reach at least 23 miles per hour with the ball in their hands: Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill. Truly, everybody, he is fast. You see him move at a different speed with the ball in his hands. Unfortunately, we didn't see him get more opportunities in this one. I'm going to go back to well with Mostert as an RB2 next week. I just think in a better game script, we will see him get over that 15 carry mark, but having Wilson this involved is not ideal. Only other note about this backfield: Tevin Coleman got completely lit up when he randomly came into the game at the goal line. It was like, oh my goodness, man, hope you were staying ready, because that looked painful. With these wide receivers mentioned, Ayuk had that bad play with the pick. Don't, be hard on him, because he also had an awesome 49er catch down the sideline. He twisted up Tre'Davious White, a man-on-man coverage a couple times, and was just really getting open all evening long. So Debo Samuel had six catches, 73 yards, and 9 targets. Actually a little bit more beyond the line of scrimmage than normal. Coming in this game, Debo Samuel had more yards after the catch than he actually did receiving yards. The majority of his targets are, just those pop passes or screens behind the line of scrimmage. It's going to be very interesting to see how the kind of final rankings go for 2021 with these 49ers wide receivers. I could see it being a situation where Samuel and Ayuk should be fairly evenly located in their just average draft position, but wouldn't be shocked if we do see some sort of disparity. Might be able to take advantage, because I really think both Samuel and Ayuk are incredibly talented. Next year, with a full season with Jimmy G and the off season and Shanny really getting them going, we could see both these guys be potential top 25 options at the position. Not too many more notes. I think I missed the Bills backfield real quick. Zach Moss actually had a fumble on the 2-yard line. He got dinged up before it, but either way, he didn't really play the rest of the game. Devin Singletary dominated usage with 50 snaps, and Moss only had 11. So Singletary, 61 yards on his 18 carries. He wasn't able to find the end zone, added 22 receiving yards. So pretty empty 21 touches. But hey, if they really are going to put Moss on the bench like this, Singletary could get back into that RB2 mode. The only issue is Josh Allen usually doesn't make a habit of checking the ball down. He's also, just as likely to score a goal line touchdown as anyone. So usually can't get too behind Singletary or Moss in this not so fancy friendly backfield. But if we take away Moss, we can actually get back to firing back up Singletary with some confidence. Shout out Bills Mafia and Washington football team again. Great wins for the squad. Now let's get on to some waiver wire stuff, everybody. So make sure you check out PFF.com. We'll have some waiver wire stuff up this week that goes into more specifics. But again, I just look at some articles around the industry, looked at some injuries just to see kind of who the natural waiver wire people are going to be. Got my thoughts on the following 10 guys. So without further ado, some waiver wire thoughts for week 14. First up, Jalen Hurts, Eagles backup, maybe the starting QB. He came in last week for Carson Wentz. We got Doug Peterson coming out saying he hasn't made a decision yet. Usually when they start wavering on the starting quarterback, they do go the backup. So not this week, everybody. We're not getting Jalen Hurts for this week because, we still don't know if it's going to be fully him or if it's going to be some sort of 2 quarterback system with him and Carson Wentz. And either way, we got a situation where he's playing the New Orleans Saints defense that has just been a buzzsaw really since their week 9 bye. So Saints on defense are playing, since their week 6 bye. I believe. Either way, Saints defense playing some fantastic ball. They've just really only been rivaled by the Rams and Steelers ever since their bye week. And because of that, I want nothing to do with Jalen Hurts in his first potential career start. But just realize after that, guys, we got the Cardinals in week 15 and the Cowboys in week 16. Jalen Hurts rushed for 3,200 yards and 43 scores at Bama and Oklahoma. This guy is legit sub 4.6 speed at 220 pounds. I mean, with a full starting job, he's going to push for 10 plus carries easily. So as we're seeing with Taysom Hill, even if he's not as developed as a passer yet, which I'm not even saying Hurts couldn't be. He threw a beautiful deep ball to Rager in that game on Sunday, and he also had the pretty touchdown to Greg Warden, now 4th and 18. So I'm not even trying to say Hurts is, a Taysom Hill as a thrower, but he's going to have that Taysom Hill rushing role. And Taysom, over these past 3 weeks, has the 4th most fantasy points from rushing, regardless of position. So when these quarterbacks can get 10 to 15 carries, truly a fantasy football cheat code. Please try to get Jalen Hurts. I think he could be a legit top 12 quarterback in weeks 15 and 16 when we need him most in the fantasy football playoffs. Jets running back Ty Johnson. I'm not really in on Ty, guys. Look, if nothing changes in the Jets backfield, we can treat him as, maybe a top 30 option. But I've been telling you guys this all season with LaMichael Piron, Frank Gore, whoever the next guy up is after, Le'Veon Bell's exited. And I'm not convinced that Ty Johnson's going to all of a sudden get, this ridiculous workload. Maybe he just had the first 100-yard rushing game for the Jets under Adam Gase, but, we need Gore to stay in the concussion protocol. Piron isn't eligible to return until next week at the earliest. Doesn't even, sound like he necessarily has a chance to regardless, but we'll see. Josh Adams still getting some touches, and they're going to add somebody to the equation. So, hey, will the person that's added to the equation, really be good enough or have enough trust to overtake Ty Johnson or Josh Adams? I don't know. Ty Johnson wasn't on the freaking team until a couple weeks ago. So it's just a tough situation to really feel too good about, Ty, because I don't know that we can feel good about anybody in this offense. So credit to Sam Darnold. I mean, they put up some points against the Raiders, and should have really won that game if it wasn't for their freaking defensive coordinator who has since been fired. Shout out Greg Williams. Good call, man. That worked out. But 28 points against the Raiders, we'll take it. Just realize, this is still the league's 32nd ranked scoring offense. And the Seahawks, while they actually have been playing a little bit better lately, I just don't think it's quite the matchup we want to truly attack. But tune back in for our Wednesday edition of this podcast. I want to talk a little more about maybe Darnold's streaming potential in this matchup. I don't think so, but it will be interesting because the Seattle Seahawks passing defense in particular has been a lot of trouble. So I know Wayne Gallman has some success, but I just think Ty Johnson in this offense doesn't quite have the same firepower. So Ty Johnson, I am staying away. Cam Akers is someone we got to keep an eye on. So he was a DMP on Monday's practice estimation. For those that don't know, when a team plays on Thursday, which the Rams are this week against the Patriots, they don't practice on Monday, but the NFL asked them to report an estimated practice, estimation. So I saw some, people just saying, hey, maybe they're resting him after that big workload. I don't think they would say that, for a practice that didn't happen, that he missed it with a shoulder injury if there was just nothing going on there. Clearly, he is dinged up to some extent. And because of that, we need to adjust accordingly, guys. I feel like everyone wants Cam Akers to break out of this backfield situation so bad. We aren't looking at this with a clear mind. Darrell Henderson suffered a knee injury in the first half last week. That's why Cam Akers ended up playing 60% of snaps and had 20 plus carries while the rest of these guys weren't as involved. What did McVay say in the postgame? All three of those backs did a great job contributing. This is what he's been saying all freaking year. They started Cam Akers in week 1. I understand Henderson was hurt, but he came back. He had great plays against Washington. It's not like Cam Akers has done nothing all season long. He's made good plays. They just continuously use all three guys. So at least Malcolm Brown at this point in the season is not really a threat to the overall carries. He's going to go out there for some short yardage, some pass down work, just situations where they trust him. But it's going to be Akers or Henderson as the lead back. The problem is if Akers at less than 100%, then he's not going to be, as viable to be that lead guy on a weekly basis. So honestly, Henderson is probably the one that we got to feel a little bit better about for this week, depending on what the shoulder injury is. So maybe it's nothing, but either way, fully expecting all three backs to continue to be involved. And hey, it's maybe the lead back is going to get, this 15, 20 touches, but I don't think it's clear cut. And I think, with the way that we are seeing all three guys continue to be involved, we can't really rank either as more than a borderline RB2 at best. So, hey, I want Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson over Ty Johnson for sure. But the running back, I actually think we should be focusing on purely for week 14. Goodness, everybody. It's Adrian Peterson. Don't stop the podcast just yet. Hear me out. Look, first game post Matt Patricia. I did not think the Lions' focus would be getting Adrian Peterson the ball. I was wrong. He had his most carries since week 3. I mean, look, in weeks 11 to 12, this is all without DeAndre Swift. Peterson had only played 30 and 27% of the snaps. Week freaking 13 jumped up to 47%. So Kerryon Johnson still right there at 44%, but Kerryon was playing more in games that Detroit was losing in a negative game script. This was a game they were actually, very much in throughout the way. So, excuse me, no. I said that wrong. This was a game that they were also losing. They've been losing in the past 3 weeks. They were able to come back. But this game, Adrian Peterson still led the way despite them losing. So this was an actual usage shift, one that, cannot be explained by just a change in game script like we see in other situations. So I understand it's Adrian Peterson, but he just keeps scoring touchdowns. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every single week, but he is the guy in this offense that is in line to get these goal line rushes. And they've been consistent about it. And now, if we were going to a tougher matchup, that'd be one thing, but we're not. We are now facing the Green Bay Packers defense that is the third worst fantasy defense to RBs other than Detroit and Houston. So Dalvin Cook has 5 rushing touchdowns against them in 2 games. Ronald Jones went for 113 and 2 touchdowns. Todd Gurley went for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery had 103 yards on 11 carries against his Packers defense. It's a dream spot for Adrian Peterson. Again, it's weird. I understand it. I did not expect, to be sitting here on freaking December 7th telling you to play soon to be, there'll be 36 in March. Old man AP, I think that is the reality we're in. He is likely going to be a top 24 option in week 14 as long as DeAndre Swift remains sidelined with illness. If Swift is back, I'm probably going to rank him as more of an RB2 and RB1, just concerning to see this whole illness thing play out. He's cleared the concussion protocol. AP said that he's not, feeling 100% still. I'm talking about Swift not feeling 100%. So I don't know. Swift was, getting freed and really seemed like he had that RB1 role on lock. But if he comes back, we're probably going to need to take it just a little bit slower than we'd like to. Kiki Cutie from the Texans. Look, he has more than 6 targets in 5 career games now. And in those performances, he's had 11 catches for 109 yards, 5 catches for 77 yards, 8 catches for 141 yards, 5 catches 68 yards, 6 catches 51 yards in a score, and 11 catches for 110 yards in a score. So actually 6 games, but either way, at least 5 catches in every single one of them, at least 50 yards, and he was able to score in 2 of them as well. So look, Kiki, he's a slot receiver. He played behind in this one, Brandon Cooks and Scott Hansen as well. But, still playing over 75% of the offensive snaps, and we just need to realize in this passing game, it's Cooks 1, Cutie 2, and Hansen 3, even if the snaps are a little bit lower. So, you look at this, I don't even know that we want to start necessarily Cutie against the Bears or against the Colts the following week, but week 16, the Houston Texans play the Bengals. I guess what's made the whole Will Fuller thing that much more disheartening. He would be a freaking top 10 option in that spot. But look, we were talking super high upside for week 16. So Kiki Cutie, if he's out there on the waiver wire, I understand you're probably not going to be slotting him in these next 2 matchups if you are in the fantasy playoffs and you have a pretty good squad, but week 16 could be that legit week that we were going to Kiki expecting a big performance. He's solid, but more than anything, Deshaun Watson's a freaking god, and we want gods, number 1 and number 2 wide receivers more times than not. T.Y. Hilton is someone that's had 4 catches, 81 yards, and 8 catches, 110 yards in the score over the past 2 weeks. Guys, he didn't even reach 70 yards or score once in weeks 1 through 11. So look, as I've cautioned you on Michael Pittman, as I said, I just think this offense is too crowded and we aren't seeing, enough sustainable production to expect it to continue. Same story with T.Y. Hilton. Since the Colts week 7 bye, Pittman has 32 targets. Hines has 30. Hilton has 28. Zach Pascal has 26. Trey Burton, 22. And then we got Mo Alley Cox, Marcus Johnson, Jonathan Taylor, even Jordan Wilkins have between 11 and 18. So truly the most crowded passing game in the league. And I get it. They're facing the Raiders and the Texans next. I mean, Hilton and Pittman are boom or bust wide receiver 3s. It's just impossible to fire up either with any level of confidence. So, Hilton, to me, you're getting a Tim Patrick guy there. It's not that big of a difference between Hilton and Tim Patrick. You're getting someone in a passing game that, while they do flash some upside from time to time, we just don't exactly know, even though we do know what kind of upside ends up being for the individual parts, and that is of the boom or bust variety. Moving on to Tim Patrick. Honestly, I think I'd rather have Tim Patrick over T.Y. Hilton the rest of the season, just because it's far more of a condensed passing game in Denver than it is in Indianapolis. So give me Tim Patrick. If you remove the practice squad wide receiver game from his just schedule, which makes sense, I think that's reasonable to do. He scored and or surpassed 100 yards in 6 of his last 8 games. This is not, a 2-game streak for Patrick. This is a situation where we have seen him really, see 6 to 8 targets more weeks than not. He only had 4 last week, but scored on 2 of them. He's been making plays throughout the year. So Jerry Jeudy's been the guy we've been hoping to emerge from this offense. But at some point, we got to get hit in the head enough times to realize that Tim Patrick is looking more and more like the number one wide receiver in Denver. So like T.Y. Hilton, it's not someone I'm going to have inside my top 30 and just be, absolutely pound the table for you guys to go out there and start. But worse guys to have than the projected, number one to number two wide receiver in pretty much any offense. That is starting to also apply to Colin Johnson. So weirdly, even with Chris Conley back, we saw Colin Johnson play ahead of him. I would just caution this one, guys. There's some streamer appeal going on with the Jaguars because they're facing the Titans defense that we just saw Baker Mayfield shred. And Mike Glennon is the only QB randomly in the league with the deep ball rate over 20%. So he is slinging it. Just realized last week, he had 3 turnovers and the touchdown to Laviska Shenault should have been an interception. So you look at the snaps, DJ Chark played 87%. Keelan Cole, 69%, Colin Johnson, 55%, Laviska Shenault, 35%, and Chris Conley, 11%. Like, what is Laviska doing only playing 35%? Like, It doesn't even make any sense. I think everything behind Chark is still muddled despite Johnson's small success. Maybe he keeps on keeping on. I get it. The matchup isn't anything of a concern, but I would rather, take a chance here with some, Conchera and GPP lineups. I think it's way too volatile of a situation to feel good about in these, key redraft playoff games. A couple tight ends to send you all home. Cole Kmet, Bears' new starting tight end. Last 3 games, he's played 70, 78, and 79% of the snaps with 13 combined targets along the way. Previously hadn't reached 50% or even 3 targets in a game. So Jimmy Graham has been under 50% snaps over the past 2 weeks, only 5 combined targets. Reminder, Jimmy Graham has a no trade clause in the Chicago Bears. Unfreaking real. Good job. 2017, 2018 GM of the year, Ryan Pace. Awesome job, man. But yeah, Cole Kmet, he's looked good. He's the same touchdown dependent tight end too that Jimmy was. I think it's a little bit higher of a yardage floor because Kmet's a better athlete at this point in their careers. But just realize Jimmy Graham, it could not be less of a viable fantasy option it is the Cole Kmet show in Chicago. Question as to how good of a show that will be. I hear you, but he is a viable streamable and viable tight end too with a little bit of upside that is probably on more waiver wires than not. Last point that I would caution against getting is Dan Arnold with the Cardinals. Had 2 catches for 62 yards and a pair of touchdowns on 3 targets last week. Guys, he hasn't played 50% snaps in the game since week 4. This is what we call fluky, ladies and mostly gentlemen. He only played 9 snaps last game, so he had 3 targets in it. We've seen Kyler throwing him the ball, but if we roster Dan Arnold, we're more or less hoping that on his 1 or 2 targets per game, he is going to come down with one of them for a score. So he's good, 10.2 yards per target. But if we were only playing good fantasy players, we would have been firing up Andy Isabella all season long, waiting for something to happen. Guess what? Nothing has. This Cardinals offense, other than DeAndre Hopkins in the passing game, has pretty much been broke all year. Look, Kyler, incredible fantasy asset, but he is first among all QBs in fantasy points from rushing production, 14th in fantasy points among all QBs from passing production, with the overwhelming majority of that going DeAndre Hopkins, and behind him, usually Christian Kirk. So Hopkins has been great. Kyler's been great. Everyone else just a little bit inconsistent in year 2 of this Kingsbury-Kyler marriage. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, bringing new episodes every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Check me out on Twitter at iHartitz, IHARTITZ. Don't forget the Z. Things get weird in a hurry if you do. I tweet out the episodes and articles along the way throughout the week. So thank you for tuning in. As always, happy week 14. Go get that freaking fantasy football championship, everybody. We worked hard. We've made it here. Let's go get those W's. So until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.